Hi and welcome to another episode of the Kata Critic, the show where I take a look at your kata and provide constructive, positive feedback to help us all improve our skills. In today's episode, I'm gonna have a look at 3 new kata that you've sent me to see if there's something that we can learn or improve from watching these performances. Check it out. Disclaimer. Again, before we start, I have to give you the disclaimer. The purpose of this show is not to tear apart your kata and rip you a new hole, but to actually see if there's something we can all learn from looking at your performance. Not because I'm the best at kata, because I've done so many bad kata in my life that I know the most popular common mistakes that tend to happen over and over again. Ready? Let's start with the first kata. Okay, so if you watched the first episode of the Kata Critic, you know that I've never seen these videos before. I have no idea what I'm about to watch, and neither do you. All I know is that this video file is titled Heian Sandan. So let's have a look.
Heian Sandan!
Pretty strong. Oh, hey, it's the Seishin gi. That's already a big plus in my book, because it is the world's best gi. Okay. So in general, this is a good performance of a kata. I especially like that it had a pretty fast pace. There were not a lot of exaggerated pauses and stuff. But there's also a problem when you have a fast pace, that sometimes you don't exactly finish a technique properly before you move on to the next technique. So when you're doing a technique, you want to make sure that all of the energy is properly transferred into one move before you start doing the next move. You want to dump all of your mass, all of your force and power into the target, and then release that tension and then move on to the next technique. And in this case, sometimes it felt like one technique was not exactly 100% finished. There was still a little bit of tension in the system before the next technique started. Especially if you will look at those last moves again. And this is really tricky when you want to have a fast pace in your kata. But you need to practice, in this case, your kime, your quick neuromuscular relaxation. Think about this. Relaxation, tension, and relaxation. That's how a technique works. You start from a relaxed state. You generate force and power, kabam! And then after you release that tension, you relax again. So the ratio of relaxation to tension is 2-to-1. You start and finish with relaxation, and there's some tension in between. Meaning, in this case, I think the best way to improve the kata is not to add more force and power, because it's already there, but to focus more on the start and the stop. I would suggest actually slowing down the kata, because that's one of the best ways of finding the points of relaxation and tension and that contrast in your kata. So to improve this kata, maybe slow it down a little bit and focus more on distinguishing when and where to have force and when to let that force go. Does that make sense? That's my main piece of advice in this particular performance. Let's move on. Next up, we have a video titled Nai Hanshin Shodan, which is one of the most important kata when it comes to building a good foundation of karate. So I'm excited to see this kata. have to say for blue belt, this is actually a pretty good performance. And the body dynamics are very close to what they're supposed to be for this specific kata. So if I have to give one piece of advice to make it even better, I would focus on what happens between the movements. It looks more like a demonstration of techniques rather than a fight. And to me, a kata should be like you're fighting. So in this case, he was doing a technique, and then another technique, and then another technique, and then another technique, but it wasn't like a real fight. There needs to be more of that kind of real or alive element to the kata, so that it turns from a technical demonstration into something that feels and looks more like an actual fight. So, for example, have a look at one of my kata performances when I did the second Naihanshin kata, Naihanshin Nidan, at one of my visits to Okinawa. I'm just gonna put it in here so you can see what I'm actually talking about. Of course, you want to perform each technique properly and correctly, but after a technique is done, there is no need to wait for something else to happen. You want to keep that pressure, that fighting spirit intact throughout the whole kata, so the narrative tells a story of you being in a fight. And of course, a kata is not a fight against multiple opponents. It is a combination of techniques, but when you put it all together, it becomes more than the sum of its parts. Let's move on. Okay, so this is Seipai kata, a popular kata in Goju-ryu and Shito-ryu. Looks very traditional by the way it's executed. Actually, I was pretty captivated by that performance. In this case, it felt like it was more alive, like it was an actual fight rather than a demonstration of techniques. But also, that's why it was a little bit rough around the edges. You need to add a little bit more dynamic rhythm when it comes to the performance, because now it was like bang, 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 all the way to the end, like a train just, going down the tracks. Excuse me. But what I would love to see more in this particular performance is a little bit of pauses. Not these exaggerated Hollywood style effects, but to show the people watching that, bam, I just killed that sucker. Oh, here's the next sucker, bam, bam, bam. Okay, now he's finished. Oh, here's the next sucker. So you get that idea that you're actually performing a kata rather than just repeating move after move after move after move. It's like when you study photography. It's about the negative spaces, what happens around the subject matter. Or like music, it's not just about the notes or the tones or the pitch, but what happens between the notes, the stillness or silence in the music. Or like a good movie, it's not just about action all the time, like you're watching a Schwarzenegger movie or Rambo or something like. It gets boring after a while, right? And if you want to captivate the interest of people watching, and also to generate a different kind of feeling for yourself, then maybe start thinking more about the power of pauses. Not artificial fake pauses, but those that actually blend naturally into the moves of the kata. And that is only possible when you understand what the moves are used for, meaning the bunkai. Because once an opponent has been finished, then you want that zanshin, that situational awareness, before you move on to the next part of the kata. And it also gives you a little bit of breathing room, so you're not totally exhausted once the kata is over, which gives you the ability to maintain a higher level of performance consistently from start to finish without dropping anything. Does that make sense? At least that's what I'm seeing when I'm looking at the kata. But of course, different styles have different ways of doing kata. And your sensei or that sensei or his sensei or her sensei might say something completely different. And that's what's so beautiful about this fascinating art, because everything is right, which is why everything is also wrong. I hope you enjoyed this second episode of the Kata Critic. If you want me to have a look at your kata in the next episode, just drop it in the comment section, and if you're lucky, I might have a look. Train hard, good luck, and have fun.